My name is Jerry Gill. Today is September 10, 2010. I'm visiting with Don Ellis on the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And this interview is for the O State Storage Project, the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. And Don, I appreciate you taking time away from your football weekend activities to come and visit with me.
You're welcome.
And I started, we want to talk about your lifelong relationship with Oklahoma State University. But first of all, Don, could we kind of step back and could you tell me a little bit about where you grew up, your family, your parents?
Okay. I grew up in Hobart, Oklahoma, attended all 12 years of school in Hobart. After that, instead of coming directly to college, I worked for a year to get a little more mature. And then I went to Cameron University for 2 years, decided I better come to Oklahoma State. So I came up here and got a degree in agronomy and business and went back home to the farm.
Okay. Let me back up and ask you, so what year did you graduate from Hobart High School?
1960.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the school and community activities that you're involved in?
Well, we were I was in FFA and mixed chorus and all kinds of H club and stuff like that. I never did play really varsity athletics. I was always too small, but really enjoyed athletics and stuff like that, but I just never was good enough at it, Jerry, like you. And then just all kinds of wonderful little small town community activities.
Well, Don, what, brothers and sisters?
Have one sister that's 14 years older, and then she has 3 children. 2 of them, one's her oldest son, the only son, is 4 years younger than me, James Carley, and he's a doctor here in Stillwater, MD. So he and I grew up together more like brothers than my sister and I did, because there's so much difference in age. And then Kathy, the oldest girl, she married Tommy Franks, and the General Tommy Franks that ran the war in Afghanistan and Iraq.
And this is your niece.
This is my niece and her husband. And then I have another younger niece that's about 10 years younger than Kathy, and she lives in Houston, Texas, Karen.
So Don, although you lived in Hobart, your family had a farm there
At Roosevelt.
Roosevelt.
Right. My dad moved to Hobart when I was 4 years old, so we'd live in town. But after college, I went back home, decided to build a house out on the farm, so I'd be closer to the farm and wouldn't miss so much activities of the kids. And then we lived in the Roosevelt community then.
Okay. So after you then graduated in again
65.
65. But you went so you laid out for a year.
Yeah.
So you graduated in 1960 from high school, kind of tracking it here.
Right.
You laid out for a year and then spent
got
a couple of years.
Got an associate's degree from Cameron in '63.
Okay. So what interested you in Oklahoma State University?
Well, it was the agriculture college was the main thing.
Is there anybody particularly you knew that your family had gone to OSU?
No, in fact, I was the first one in the family to really to attend college. And so really didn't. Oh, I had been up to here at OSU in Stillwater with FFA and 4-H functions and stuff like that, so I was familiar with the university. But
so you enrolled in 63?
63.
63, okay.
Yeah.
And you graduated in
65.
In animal science?
No, in agronomy.
Agronomy.
Agronomy and business.
Agronomy with the business option.
Yeah.
Do you remember some of your professors that you had, some of the teachers at that time?
Oh, Dr. Sanders was my advisor in agronomy, and there was Dr. Matt Locke, and there were, man, that, you know what, that's been about 45 years ago. And I don't recall some,
You remember who was the dean of the college at that time?
was it Jones? Was Dr. Jones the dean then? I forgot.
It seemed like he was associate dean.
He might have been.
He was in charge of enrollment for all the students and so on. Don, let me just back up just a minute. A question I meant to ask and forgot earlier is, when you grew up, I guess, working around the farm and taking care of animals, were there some values or principles that you learned growing up that helped you be successful later in life?
Well, the work ethic, you know, I mean, you better have it in a farm and ranch operation or you won't survive. So the work ethic, you had to learn to work from daylight to dark to get things accomplished. And if you didn't get done, you just had to do it again tomorrow, you know. So, but then the wheat and cattle always was an interest to me, and just the lifestyle. It's a way of life as much as it is a way to make a living, you know.
Sounds like you sort of, that's what you wanted to do in life, and
Exactly.
decided that early on.
I did. And then realized the importance of an education to learn to do it better. And after Cameron, I went out to Texas Tech and went through the agriculture college and talked to an advisor. And he said, Don, now if you plan on going back into production agriculture in Oklahoma, we'd love to have you come to Texas Tech at Lubbock, but you need to go to Oklahoma State and meet more people and meet the professors, because that's where you'll be the rest of your life. And that was really good advice, and I appreciated that too.
So what was the fascination and the interest of Texas Tech?
Texas Tech, I was interested in irrigated cotton, cotton at that time. And at that time, they probably, because they were in the irrigated area, they were a little...
So they had a national reputation in that area?
They did.
Where did you live when you were here on the campus?
We lived in, I was married at the time.
Okay.
See, I was married in '62, halfway through my Cameron education.
And of course, this is Janice, right?
Janice Ellis, Janice White. And
did y'all
had two children. We had one child when we came up here and had another child before we left. So
did y'all meet in high school?
Yes, we were, I think we started dating. She was in Hobart High School too, and she was 8th grade and I was a sophomore when we started going together. So kind of a childhood sweetheart, you know. But we lived on McElroy, right north of the stadium. And in a duplex with 2 or 3 other guys that came up from, we lived in one duplex, and another friend lived in the next door, and another guy lived next door to that from Cameron. So there's quite a few of us came up from Cameron together, since it was a junior college at the time.
Can you share a little bit about your experience at Oklahoma State University? Were you involved in any organizations or activities?
I was in the agronomy club, and then I was honored to be chosen to be in the Alpha Zeta honorary ag fraternity. And we really studied hard to try to make it. But
did you have to work as a student?
I didn't. I worked at home. I would go home on weekends most of the time. And I was farming at that time.
You're still using income from your farming activities to pay for your education.
Try to make enough money in the summer and then plant wheat and in the fall, and then harvest it when I'd get out of school. So I was farming to go to school.
You burned a lot of gas in those days. Of course, gas was probably 20 cents a gallon, wasn't it?
But it's 200 miles each way too.
Wow, a lot of time.
A lot of time.
What were you driving?
Oh, I believe I had a 63 Chevrolet at that time car. And first one that I ever had with an air conditioner in it. And that was pretty impressive and important. And
Don, what were some of the favorite student places, hangouts on campus and off campus when you were in school?
You know what? I hung out in the library more than I did anywhere else. Being a married student and a parent, I did attend most of the athletic events, but as far as between going home and studying and going back to school, I didn't have time to do too much other.
Don, just thinking back, I know just a couple of years, and you were, as you said, you were there to get that degree, but were there some special memories you have of your time at Oklahoma State, or some things that stand out in your mind?
Oh, there are a lot of them, but I really can't recall one that was just the friendships that I've made in the classes that I was in, classmates. Some of them I still communicate with and with regularly. You know.
Was the advice you got from the professor at Texas Tech, was he right about that? You met a lot of people?
He was right on. You meet a lot of people that you'll associate with the rest of your life, and it's real good advice.
Don, after you graduated in '65,
yes.
So you said you went back to the farm. Can you talk maybe some highlights of your career, your professional career, and your family after you went back to Hobart?
Well,
or Roosevelt, I guess, actually.
We actually went back to Roosevelt, lived in a little house out on the farm in the summers, and then in '66 we decided to build a house out on the farm. Instead, it'd be 16 miles south of Hobart. I grew up in Hobart, and that was a pretty good commute every day back and forth, so we decided to have our permanent house out on the farm. And 2 children, Tracy, our daughter, and Nick, our son, and they, when they were old enough, they went to the Roosevelt, in the Roosevelt School District.
So were you starting, were you in business with your dad when you started off, or how'd that work?
We did start out together. I would rent land off of him and then other neighbors, and then finally purchased some from my father and other people, and built it up big enough to make a living, you know.
How many acres would you be in terms of what you own?
We had a couple thousand at one time, and now I've backed it off to where we just have about 800.
So you cow-calf operation?
At that time, I was mostly a stalker. Buy stocker calves and sell feeder cattle, and fed some cattle in the Texas Panhandle, and ran cattle on wheat pasture. But wheat and cotton and cattle were the main parts of the operation.
Any regrets? Is that as you look back, is that kind of what you wanted to do and enjoyed what you did?
It was exactly what I wanted to do and the lifestyle I wanted to live, and enjoyed it very much.
Don, you were involved in a lot of numerous leadership organizations and had leadership roles. Can you talk a little bit about some of those activities? I think you were active with CREC, I mean with REC and the Rural Cooperative and your bank and some other things.
We were active in the community in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. I served on the school board at Roosevelt, and then I was elected to the Board of Trustees at Southwest Rural Electric in Tipton, Oklahoma, that provides our electricity, rural electric co-op. And I've been serving on that board for 35 years now.
Continuous?
Continuous.
Wow.
And so it's been a big part of my life, as has Oklahoma State. But from that organization, I represented our cooperative on the statewide board of directors of the Oklahoma Association of Electric Co-ops, and served in that capacity as president of the OAC in about '93, I believe, and then served as president of the Directors Association. It's just been another real good part of my life is the rural electric cooperatives.
You've invested a lot of your life and time in that
Sure
organization. Yeah. And you serve now with was the bank in Roosevelt? Or?
I did. We had in 1980 a group of investors bought minority interest in a bank in Roosevelt, and then that was not a real good time. And then the bank majority holder really we decided we didn't want to be associated with that deal, so we resigned, and then later, about 2 years and 8 months later, that bank failed. So that was the extent of my banking experience.
And that was a pretty tough experience for you too, wasn't it?
Well, it was. It was something we couldn't control, you know, so. But,
Don, we've talked about your experience with CREC and some in the bank, and I'm sure you're involved in the community, the school board, probably your local church and other things. But could we talk a little bit about your time with the Alumni Association?
Okay.
And you spent many years
right.
in that capacity.
Well,
So did you start at the local level, local chapter level?
When I went back home, I was so proud of the education I received at Oklahoma State. I wanted to make it available to other students that probably didn't have the knowledge or the experience to know that they could probably make it at Oklahoma State to a big comprehensive university. And so I became active in our county alumni association and honors banquet system that the Alumni Association sponsored, and really because of my love for the university. And from there, you know, I served as president of the county alumni association, and later served as on the board of directors of the OSU Alumni Association.
And I want to ask you about that in a minute, but I got to back up and ask you first. Merle Rogers was executive director of the Alumni Association.
Yes, sir.
What do you remember about Merle?
Oh, he was enthusiastic about the university just like all the rest of us, and great leader, great leader. I don't really recall any specific stories, but just a great man.
He was a tireless worker, wasn't he?
He was, worked hard at it. Loved the university, loved the Alumni Association.
And he was always, and every year I remember the football team was going to go 10-0, right? He was an optimist.
That's right.
Now, I guess about not too long after you got active in the Alumni Association, and Ray Sharp, who had been under Merle for several years,
Yes.
took over. What do you worked with?
And I worked with
Ray when he first come onto the board, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Ray?
Ray was a good friend, and he did a good job too. And I don't know just exactly what happened, but I don't recall specifics. But he was a real good guy too. I enjoyed working with him. And then about that time, I believe you and I met when you were director of the OSU Posse.
Yes.
And I served on the Posse Advisory Board. And then, boy, it was a great thing for the university and for everyone when Dr. Gill came over to the Alumni Association. I want to tell everyone that right now.
Well, I remember you had an airplane at the time, Don.
Yeah, that's right.
You used to fly quite a bit.
Yeah.
And did you ever fly any of the coaches?
I never did fly any of the coaches, but I had some of the coaches down to Hobart and try to recruit some kids. Brad Caleb, and he was a small kid, I think 170 pounds or 60 pounds, quarterback, and great athlete. He was the Oklahoma Athlete of the Year that year, but Jimmy Johnson decided he was too small, but the kid went on to East Central and All-American there, and then played professional football in the Canadian Football League. But I tried to get the guys to recruit him for Oklahoma State, and they just wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, Don, do you remember what year you went on the national board? Somewhere in the early 80s?
It would have been early 81 or 2 or 3, something like that. I forgot. No, it might have been the late 70s even.
You served past president served as ex-official members, but
Yeah.
before you moved into that role, how many years were you on the board? Do you recall it on the board and the executive committee?
I was on the executive committee from about 86, probably. I think I was elected president-elect in '86 or '7. I served as national president of the Alumni Association '88 and '89. So I was on the executive committee about 2 years before.
And you were president which year?
'88.
'88, okay. Don, do you remember some of the people that served with you on the board at that time? You know, some of the keys, some of your leadership
Wendell
team?
Locke was the president immediately before me, and then Charlotte Crank before him, and then Bruce Scott followed me. So we had a real good group of.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good group, and two of those are deceased now. There's Bruce Scott and Wendell Locke.
And Bruce Benbrook was not too far after that, was he?
And Bruce was about the year after. Bruce Benbrook was the year after Bruce Scott, I believe. Yep.
This was a transitional period in the Alumni Association, as we recall. Do you remember what some of the key issues were at that time, some of the challenges that the association had? The
challenges were the OSU Foundation and the Alumni Association, as I recall, shared a lot of the ownership of the mailing list and the names, and we didn't have as much ownership in the Alumni Association as we needed to have, in my mind, and therefore some of the financial support from the foundation, we lost some of that, and then during this same time frame, we had to become more independent financially, and that's when I think during our time we developed the credit card concept and made it very beneficial to the Alumni Association. And then we also had a desire to be more associated with the administration of the university, and we had a lot more support of the university because of our efforts after the foundation too, I believe.
I think the executive director then started reporting on the president's team.
That's right.
Too, wasn't it?
Yes. And the director of the Alumni Association was a member of the leadership of the university, and that was very important to us.
Don, what were some of the key programs and activities of the Alumni Association during your leadership era?
Well, of course, the homecoming activities that was a big part of the Alumni Association and still is. One thing that we were proud of at the time I was serving on the executive committee is we helped organize the Cowboys for Higher Education, and that was very beneficial to the Alumni Association, but mainly the university, where alums would go down and lobby for things that would be beneficial to the university, and that was a very successful program starting in the mid-'80s, late '80s, and still today is something that needs to be done.
Were the honors bank was still going pretty strong at that time?
They were, and we're proud to say the honors banquet system is still going strong in southwest Oklahoma. Hobart, Jackson County, or Hobart is Kiowa County, but Kiowa County and Tillman County still have a real active honors banquet.
Can you talk about the little, because that for years the Alumni Association was engaged. How did that work? What was it?
Well, the Alumni Association, the local chapters would identify the top 10 or 15% of the classes, the honor students in the county schools, and then the Alumni Association would bring down speakers and to encourage kids to go to college, especially at Oklahoma State, and we got to the point that we were smaller enrollments, and we would try to get the top 20% of the classes to come to get more numbers, and the top 20% of those classes, if you're in the top 20%, you're college material too. So we really worked hard to get the kids informed about Oklahoma State University and the opportunity to go to college, whether they came here or not.
Did Garth Brooks ever come out to Hobart?
I don't believe he ever did to Hobart, but I don't recall it. If I wouldn't have even known who he was at the time.
That's right. It kind of for maybe future viewers, this interview done, he was, of course, the name Garth Brooks, we know Garth, but he was a student worker in the alumni office
Exactly.
at that time. He used to go out, one of the components of the honors banquet usually was entertainment. We'd have some student entertainment.
Right.
Garth was a student entertainer at several of these.
Exactly. I don't think he ever came. If he did, he didn't impress me that much at the time. I wished I'd have remembered it anyway.
You got an autograph.
That's right. But the honor banquet system really was beneficial to the students, and that's why we were doing it.
Now, what do you remember about the composition of the board, the alumni board at that time, the Alumni Association board? In terms of men, women, in terms of...
Well, it was predominantly men, of course, at the time, and we did have, but we had some great ladies. Charlotte Crank was the first president of the board that I recall anyway, maybe the first one, I'm not sure if she's the first lady. But she was 2 or 3 years before me, and she was a great leader and a great supporter of the university.
Don, wasn't it under your era that they started nominating, somewhere along there, we did away with we put term limits, and they're right on some of the board members. Was that during your tenure?
I believe there was a lot of change, and I didn't remember really term limits. There might have been. I don't recall them at mine.
Eventually, we tried to start turning them over a little bit. Some of them have been like 20 years on the board.
Right.
And we're trying to get some younger people on the
some
board.
new blood in there. Yeah.
And I remember that's part of your era. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
towards getting some younger members on the board, getting more women on the board.
Yes.
Things like that.
And minorities too. And we had some. I don't recall some of the names, but it did change quite a bit.
And as you look back and say the times about 4 years or so you were on the executive committee, and then when you're president, that 4, 5, 6 year period, what were some of you look back and said, and you listed one of them, the inception of Cowboys Higher Education, were there some other things that you remember that there were highlights that you thought were positive?
We did start long-term planning for the Alumni Center.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've already mentioned the credit card, OSU credit card, which turned out to be even a bigger windfall than we imagined it could be at the time, and for fundraising efforts. But I guess the big objective was to increase alumni membership more than anything else too. So, but those are the main things that I can remember.
And I think you're right. I mean, the membership increased dramatically during your tenure.
Yes.
Was important, and I know the board had a lot of influence because the board did a lot of phone calling and membership themselves and getting people back in the local areas involved.
Challenged to get, I know at the time we were challenged to get 10 life members per board member. Each one was a challenge to get 10, so that was a big effort too.
Were there some, you look back, were there some frustration and some things you didn't get accomplished that you really wanted to, or?
Don't want to get too political, but the frustrations were at that time, and it's completely changed, but the frustrations of the ownership of the mailing list of the foundation, that was a little bit problematic to the Alumni Association. That don't want to be too critical of anything, but it's a lot better now.
Now, what do you remember about Charlotte Crank? You mentioned her. She was, I think, was the first woman president since like the 19-teens.
Yeah.
There's a gap about 70 years, 60 years there. But what do you remember about Charlotte?
Charlotte was a great OSU alum, and she could be forceful enough too. I don't know if we want to get into some of the committee reports, but but she could stand up for herself. I know that.
She could be pretty direct, couldn't she?
She sure could be. Great person.
When she finished speaking, you knew where she stood.
That's right.
You knew I did a great job. What some other personalities you remember that you kind of share at that time?
Well, Wendell Locke.
Wendell, you tell me about Wendell?
Wendell was a great, an architect in Oklahoma City, and he was the president immediately before I was, and we both, he went with us on the Orient tour when we played Texas Tech in the Coca-Cola Bowl, and so he and I were together just all the time on that trip. I think his tenure just finished, and mine had just started, so it was a transition period, and
We went to Thailand also
we
on that
went to
trip.
Bangkok, Thailand, and Hong Kong, and then back to Japan, and met a lot of alums and had banquets in Bangkok, Thailand, and a great group of alums in Bangkok. And,
Don, did you make some other international trips as well?
no, that was the only
Mm-hmm.
international trip. But that 10-day trip in the Orient, we had a lot of receptions in Japan and in Thailand. And
It was
very interesting.
Barry Sanders' last OSU football game, wasn't it?
Won the Heisman Trophy while we were there. That afternoon before the game, actually, he was presented the Heisman Trophy.
What do you remember about the game? Man, that was a great atmosphere, wasn't
That was, I remember on the scoreboard, it had Heisman, it wasn't celebration, it's spelled differently, I forgot what it was now. Kind of the way Japanese would say it, I guess. But it was I remember the score of the game, 45-44. It was a real offensive shootout. And I think Barry, I don't know if that's the time he set the single season record. I'm not sure for Oklahoma State, 300 and something yards rushing, I believe.
Wow.
But
Don, how, reflecting, you've been involved in the Alumni Association several years, but picking kind of that 6, 7, 8 year, 10-year segment you were active involved, how did the Alumni Association change? How was it different over that period of time from when you started to when you kind of got out of an active role?
I'm not sure that, I think there was a lot of young, good leaders that came in during that time. It seems like, and we were more visible from the university's standpoint, I know that. And but as far as the leadership and the board of directors, I believe we were getting more new, young, aggressive board members at that time too.
Kathy Laster,
Yes.
and Gene Batchelder, and Leonard Courts, people like that.
Right, exactly.
And then, like you said, the long-range planning that your leadership team started and then come to fruition later. But a lot of things, like I said, the Alumni Center, but our finances in terms of the credit card, and a lot of those things come out of that long-range and strategic planning, didn't
It
it?
did. And I think, and we'll have to give Dr. Gill a lot of credit for a lot of this too. Through your leadership, Jerry, it was just a wonderful experience and a great opportunity to work with the Alumni Association because of your leadership.
This interview's about you, Don. Thanks, I appreciate it. Well, sort of more generic kinds of questions from your observations, your involvement over the years. How are the ways that alumni should and could be involved with their university? What things do you see? What roles do you see university alumni doing?
Well, I've always, there's 2 or 3 ways to give back to the university, financially or just your support of the university. And one can try to get the good students to attend the university in your area, and that's something I've always been more interested in and more able to do, is encourage the kids to come to Oklahoma State University, the kind of kids that you want there.
So helping recruit good students to Oklahoma State, helping, as sort of raise the visibility of the university as
Exactly.
sort of as ambassadors and advocates for the university.
Exactly.
You mentioned earlier about Cowboys for Higher Education helping trying to get
And-
support in the state for OSU and higher
And,
education.
you know, money's a big problem to any university, and the political atmosphere, the alums need to be more involved in helping support the universities, and especially the land-grant university in the state of Oklahoma is the one that we're interested in, and there's a lot of opportunities to help with that.
Don, what, from your perspective and leadership experience, what should be the mission of the Alumni Association?
Well, we're going right back to the same ones as support the university, raise the visibility of the alums, and support and recruit students is still my biggest the goal of the Alumni Association to me.
You talked about connections for life in the Alumni Association.
Right.
Is it about one of the missions of the Alumni Association, perhaps connecting alumni with each other and with their alma
Exactly.
mater?
It is. There's the Connections for Life program was great. I think that probably started a little bit later than when I was on the leadership team, but that's a great concept too. Connections for Life.
It seemed like you guys talked a lot about getting alumni together and getting them to talk about Oklahoma State and getting them connected.
Get the
Even if it
visibility.
was just part of membership, was getting people connected with that little. That time it was about a $20, $30 membership.
Yeah. And life memberships, we big push for life memberships, and they started out $200 or $300, and at one time we might have had too many of those because of I don't know what they are now, $1,000 for a life membership or more. I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So Don, if we kind of lift that up, so what you're saying is the life membership was what? It was endowment.
Yes, it was the endowment, and I think our goal was to raise just $1 million endowment at one time,
and so you could only just use the earnings off of that.
Exactly.
So when the stock market wasn't too good, those weren't doing well.
That's right. And, you know, financial part of the Alumni Association has always been a real challenge. And a lot of activities, a lot of different things we needed to do to raise money.
Don, you touched on something I'd like to maybe lift up a little more. You talked about getting the Alumni Association more independent, if you will, more self-sufficient, to be more of a self-governed kind of association, about having alumni leadership and control of it, et cetera. What's your feelings about the appropriate, how an alumni association should be structured and organized to be as effective as possible?
Well, the Alumni Association shouldn't be a tool of the university or the foundation or anyone, but we all can work together to make each other stronger. And I think the Alumni Association should be completely independent from the university. But then therefore, we need to be working together, and we need input from the administration, but we don't want the administration dictating political or fundraising efforts for the Alumni Association either. And we don't want to be a political tool for the university, but we can help them politically on raising money and allocations of resources from the state government, but we don't need to be dictated from the administration of the university either.
Now, during your year, there was a lot of discussions about being a grassroots organization and engaging, connecting as many alumni as possible. And then another kind of discussion around that area seemed like how should the Alumni Association be governed? Should the staff run it? Should it be run by for the alumni and so on. Could you speak to those two?
That's
issues?
one of the greatest strengths of a land-grant university like Oklahoma State. We have a real, we have an appearance in every county in the state of Oklahoma. And therefore, we are known, and we have friends and legislators in we have friends of legislators in every county. So the grassroots is the way to build strength in an organization, and that's what we've done, I believe, in the past. So I'm a real firm believer in the grassroots organization controlling the staff, really, of the Alumni Association. But then when you hire a good man, you've got to let him run it, though, too.
The partnership kind of
There
dynamics of where you try to get a good staff and you try to get good leadership and kind of let them work together.
Right,
It's not,
they have to work together. But, you and I both have seen strong leaders on each side that are a little dominant, but you want everyone to be aggressive and do the best they can for the university, but there's a balance there.
I wonder, surely you have some special memories of your time in the Alumni Association. You talked about the trip to the Orient, but there's some special memories and highlights of your leadership era.
That was one of the most impressive times of my leadership area. I believe we had 120 alums for 10 days on the Orient tour, and then the football game highlighted all that. But just the friendships and everything that we developed in the organization are the most important to me now. As far as highlights of the Alumni Association, we had some good successes. We'll have to, the credit card program turned out, like we said, to be even a bigger landfall than we thought it was going to be at the time. And when times were really pretty tight financially for the Alumni Association. And as far as any other special events, I can't recall one right off the top of my head now.
And a lot of I guess small highlights. And you had our annual meeting in the spring and the changeover of officers and the gifts and a lot of those kinds of activities. You had of course, you did a lot of stuff in your local chapter as well. You had some good times there.
Really. I really can't recall one that was just stands out anymore. We did have a lot of strategic planning sessions and I believe they became more popular about the time that we were on the executive committee. We'd have a leadership. The executive committee would go to different parts of the state each year and have a strategic planning session, which was very beneficial. And I believe that was probably pretty new concept for us.
Don, how do you feel about the future of the Alumni Association?
I think it's with the addition of the Alumni Center and the independent Alumni Association, it's probably as strong now as I've ever seen it. Probably better than it's ever been.
What do you think about Larry Shell coming back?
Oh, wonderful for Larry to finally, I think, accept the position's what we just think the world of Larry. And
what you maybe alluded to these before, but sort of a different way of coming at it. What do you think have been the traditional strengths through the years of the Alumni Association? And sort of maybe an add-on question is, what's the Alumni Association going to need to continue to do going forward in the future to continue to be successful?
Well, the real strength of the Alumni Association is the love of the alums for the university. And it's a way that they can give back to the university by being active in the Alumni Association. And as far as the future of the Alumni Association, boy, it's really bright. Brightest I've ever seen it.
Well, because they had such good leaders earlier on, it set a good foundation for them, Don. As we've said here, I guess for most of your life, you've been very closely affiliated with the Alumni Association at the local chapter level, and at the local level as an executive member of the National Board, as president of the National Alumni Association. You've given countless hours and your time and your resources. Why, Don, why has it been so important to you to stay connected? Why have you had so much passion for OSU?
Well, it's hard to put your finger right on it, but just the love of the university and the education that I received here, and the friends that I've made, and I want other students to have that same opportunity that I had, and learn to love the university like I have. And the Alumni Association is the way to do it.
What has OSU meant to you, Don?
Oh man,
has it been important? It's been important to you in your life. What ways?
Well, the pride, the education, and the friendships, all together. I can't. It's just been a big part of our life.
Looking back over the years, what have been some of your favorite memories of OSU?
Oh, of course, athletic events are a way to get the university spirit up and bring recognition to the university, and therefore, and there are a lot of great enjoyment, but I had a lot of athletic events that were, I remember victories over certain teams here, that wrestling matches, basketball, football, just a lot of memories with friends and students that mean a lot to us now.
And you talked about earlier, before you got as involved with the Alumni Association, you were very active on that time, the OSU Posse Advisory Board, which is Posse is the booster group for Oklahoma State University.
Athletics.
What do you remember about your time there?
We did a lot of fundraising efforts in Kiowa County, Jackson County, and Southwest Oklahoma for the Posse Club, and at that time, if you met certain goals, a lot of the Posse Advisory Board members would go on a football trip once a year, and we went to Arizona State when they were ranked 2 or 3 in the nation, and beat Arizona State 45-3, I believe.
OSU was unranked,
right? Unranked, and that was just a great night. And then I believe the next year we went to Washington, Seattle, Washington, and I got frustrated. We won the game, but they were running Thurman Thomas, I think he's a young sophomore, and I thought they were going to get the kid hurt. And I think he gained 230 or 40 yards on them or something like that. And but we won that game, and that was a big victory too. Just a lot of memories of athletic events and the good people that were associated with us.
Don, you've got some interesting activities going on now that you're working with the museum there in Hobart. Could you share a little bit of information about that?
Sure would. General Tommy Franks is married to my niece, so he and I have been best friends since I think they were married in '69, and he and I have been best friends ever since then. But after he retired, and when he ran the Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, and after he retired in about 2003, he wrote his book, The American Soldier, and then was on the speaking circuit for a couple of 3 years. He moved back and built a house. He and Kathy moved back to Roosevelt and built a house out on my dad's ranch. And at that time, different people in different communities had asked him the possibility of building a museum in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and they talked about New York City. And I told him, well, if you're going to live out here on the ranch, why don't we consider seeing if the Hobart community would like to get behind the effort to place a Tommy Franks Museum and Leadership Institute in Hobart. And boy, they jumped all over that, and he agreed that sure, we'll not only build a museum but a leadership institute to bring recognition to Hobart and educate kids. And so now this is about the second year that the museum has been opened in Hobart. And there's three main phases of the Leadership Institute Museum. We have a museum in Hobart, and we have a traveling roadshow, a traveling museum that on a trailer, that we have an educator and a driver. Then we take this trailer around to all the middle schools that it can schedule in the state of Oklahoma and Texas. And this is actually the second full year of that. And then the leadership part of it, we've had a 4-star debate in Oklahoma City. Eventually it will be in Hobart when we get the new museum built. But there's 48 kids the last 3 years have come to a leadership training session and participated in debates. And this 2 years it was in Oklahoma City. This last year, the King of Jordan took them all to Jordan. There were 48 American kids, 24 American kids, 24 Middle Eastern kids, and they paired up. And it's just a great learning experience for these kids to meet their counterparts and study on leadership activities. So that's where we're at on that.
You're pretty active then, aren't you?
Pretty active.
That's great. So you're still farming and ranching, Don?
Still farming and ranching, not doing as much as I used to, but just enough to keep me busy and keep me occupied. Do a lot of hunting and with grandkids. And life's good.
How many grandkids do you have?
I have 2 grandsons and a granddaughter. And, the oldest grandson is a graduate of Oklahoma State, and the youngest grandson is a sophomore at Oklahoma State. And we're working on our granddaughter. She's 16. We'll be recruiting her.
That's great. Well, Don, this is a serious question. I mean, but you've been involved at Oklahoma State University so much and real electric in a lot of ways in your community. And looking back, I mean, how do you hope people remember Don Ellis?
Oh man, I don't know. that he cared about the community and everything he did, I guess. And they try to make their life a little better. I don't really think about that much, but I guess that's always been one reason we've been doing it, just to make life better for other people.
Don, thinking, let me just ask, what have I left out? What have we not talked about that we ought to lift up today? That you?
I can't think of anything, Jerry.
Okay, all righty.
But we do need to tell everyone that because of Jerry Gill's leadership is why I'm here and why the University Alumni Association is as strong as it is today. And I know it'll embarrass you if I say that, but it's your leadership that's caused all this to happen too.
You're awfully kind. It's great to have really passionate leaders like yourself involved over the years, Don. And congratulations for all you've done for Oklahoma State University, and please accept our appreciation for particularly your role in leadership role in the Alumni Association. It made a big difference in life in the university.
Well, thank you.